when we talk about growing an agency, you can't not go ahead and talk about the need for retention.
Imagine if you could double your business year over year over year in a sustainable model and retain some of it as well.
We've got to jump into those role plays. We've got to do things that are hard, because sometimes things that are hard is where we learn the most.
So we're welcome back here to talk all about retention again. And if you haven't gotten the message, it's retention month. Figure that it's May, the flowers are popping up, and we might as well talk about fresh starts to retention. And how valuable it is to an agency.
April showers bring May flowers.
Bring May renewals. I did take a walk this weekend and I saw little daffodil buds coming up, and it gave me a little sense of like hope. And I was like, oh,
daffodils in our backyard yesterday. Who knew?
Yeah, but then I'm also like, but you're going to die pretty soon because we're going to have a cold snap and you're going to wilt and die, and more of you will be around. But the first batch never make it. The first batch, the first cold night frost, man, you're out. I'm sorry. There's so much hope. So much hope. So let's talk a few stats here. I have a few stats pulled up. So the average retention rate for agencies is 84%, which, I mean, I think we're pulling it. That stat to me means we're pulling in captives, non-standard. We're pulling in all sorts of stuff, because I haven't seen an 84% retention true, like once we clean up their data, in a very long time. And in fact, I think with the hard market, we're seeing higher because there's nowhere to go. So we're seeing a whole different ball of retention wax right now that's fictitious for the long haul. So if y'all looking at your retention, be like, I don't need to focus on retention. Look at my retention. People, that's because there's nowhere to go. If they want insurance, it's congratulations, you got a renewal. Figure out how to pay it. Let me know what you want to do.
When you're growing, because the premiums are higher.
Yes, which, hey, I'll take growth any way we got it. But let's not say that you're the insurance brilliant mastermind here. Okay. There's some other metrics in your agency to kind of keep an eye on. So 84 to me means we're pulling in captives and we're pulling in other places, because they tend to run a little lower than independents because of the lack of ability to move. But the top agencies in the industry are 93 to 95%. A lot of agencies we see kind of come in around 88, 89, and then some crest over to the 90s. Just depends what kind of book you're running. That does have a lot to do with your retention rate. But I do have agencies at 96%, which I could bona fide, like if I was a notary, notarize that number, because we've tortured that number and beat it to a bloody pulp, and we've seen it many times. So got to be thinking, where's your agency? So right now, if you're listening to this and you're like, oh, you know what? My retention is good. My retention is high, then you don't know your number. That's like saying, like, I feel skinny today.
I am skinny compared to some people.
Yeah. It's like, or I feel overweight today. Well, that's because I just ate and I have a food baby. So if I just plow through a plate of nachos, that's not going to help my life. But I might have lost weight. Who knows? So we have to be truth. I mean, I think one of the biggest takeaways is I want everybody to think about, do I know my retention number? And let me ask you this, Stephen, how can you run an agency effectively, truly effectively, if you do not know that number?
It's just a trick question because I don't have an answer for that. I don't think I can.
You can't say no, but there's tons of really successful agencies that we work with that come to us and they're growing and they're doing the right thing. They just don't know that number, right?
Right.
Because getting it is complicated and hard. And so we give up.
And you have to take a deep dive sometimes into your data, or understand your data, or start using one system to track your data instead of 7.
This is a new hot topic.
But there's so many great systems and they all play somewhat together. So why can't I use 7 systems to run things, Kelly?
Well, and the funny part is, a lot of times the system that they're choosing, like their current system, actually does it. They just have to know that.
Yeah. Part of the battle is getting to know what system does what and where to get the data, or what data to look for, and then also how to maintain it and clean it up. Because one of the other things we love to tell our clients is, when we first get your data in, as we're reviewing data on some of our programs, we know it's going to be messy. We know it's not 100% accurate. We just need to go in and have a starting point so we can start having those conversations and see what we need to focus on.
Starting points are always luscious.
It's the whole garbage in, garbage spreads mentality. But if we don't even know where the garbage is, we don't know where it's spreading to.
That was a hot topic. Garbage in, garbage spreads.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. So we got to figure out the retention number. So that's the first step. The second step that we have to figure out once you know it and you can stand on it is to figure out how come, Therese, our clients have 96% retention rates going higher than the top agencies in the country.
Because they do renewal reviews.
Oh, and even when their team says, I'm so busy.
Yes, even when their team says I'm so busy, because we've trained them not to say I'm so busy and to get stuff done. So I'm so busy. We all have the same 24 hours in a day. It's just how we use them. And some people, you choose to use them on their cell phones instead of in front of their computers doing their jobs. And we just have to accept it. And if you don't accept that, then you're lying to yourself, because we all do it. So instead of picking up that cell phone, pick up your work phone and do your renewal review calls.
Hey, or stop talking about when Grey's Anatomy will be back. Because here's the reality, guys. Do you know that a 5% bump in retention doubles your profit in 5 years? So when we talk about growing an agency, you can't not go ahead and talk about the need for retention. Because guess where all of your current money is? That would be like saying, I just need to focus on earning new money and not having an investment strategy for your current funds.
And I remember an agency we started working with, they were like, one of them was like, I'm the top salesperson and I'm selling so much, selling. And then when we ran the numbers, they were selling a ton, but they weren't retaining. So everything they were selling was going out the back door. So you have to kind of have a strategy for that retention, and your renewal reviews. You're building that rapport, you're nurturing those clients, and those clients shouldn't want to leave if you're doing your retention job correctly. If you're building that rapport and, nurturing those clients and giving that well customer service, they're not going to find that at other agencies. So you need to build that impressive insurance agency with those strategies and those plans that everybody follows, so your customers are never going to want to leave.
I love that.
One of the things that I find really interesting is a couple of agencies I'm working with are doubling their size year over year with new business. But then we look at their retention and it's falling out the back door. So yes, revenue-wise, they're growing because they're slamming on so much business. But if they could even increase their retention just a couple of points, imagine if you could double your business year over year over year in a sustainable model and retain some of it as well, right? I'm not saying that it's horrible. I mean, they're in the mid 80s for retention. But if we get them to 90 just by working with the service team and helping the service team understand what needs to happen, and that's what some of their comments are. We focused so much on sales and we didn't realize how much we were losing out the back because we're writing so much new that now we're seeing the light of just a little bit better service, and retaining more means that much more money.
And, the nice thing a lot of times I like to think about with retention is, say you have a producer and that producer leaves, like you can retain that book, right? Like without paying that front level scenario. So for me, when I think about retention, I think about, okay, well, who in an agency is responsible for retention? Like who is in charge of retaining that account? Is it the CSR, the account manager, the producer? Because when you don't have the clarity of the role, guess what you get? Everyone's throwing fingers, right? And so many agencies, the retention strategy is let's hope it renews, right? Because, we don't want to touch it. We don't want to deal with it. We don't want to bother with it. Or it's more fun. I mean, I'll be honest with you. It's way more fun to go sell a new policy than it is to deal with somebody and say, your rate went up 33%. How would you like to pay for that? Like, what would you rather do all day?
I'd rather retain and have difficult conversations with the clients about why things change and make them love me and the choice I've made for them.
That's good. I think I'd rather talk to new people and try to quote them and like not have the baggage.
I think mine used to be service, but now that this market is the way it is, I think it would be sales.
Yeah. It's just raining in leads everywhere from just desperation, right? And again, those people are going to have to change too when the market changes. And there'll be some heydays and there'll be some low days. But I think in the end of the day, we have to really focus on the fact that hey, what tools have we given them? So you want to get to 96% retention. Let's give people some, strategies, right? First and foremost, does your team know, one, how to stop a cancellation from happening? Like somebody calls in, says, I want to cancel, or I'm mad, or I want to shop. And then I think there's what to say. And then there is their physical reaction. Like, do they then float around the office telling everybody that someone wants to shop and spend all their time all worked up because they feel like they have to fix the person's insurance and the person lay down a threat on the table? Or do they just get to work? Because I know most people like, well, they were going to shop and they were going to leave and they threatened me. And I'm like, first of all, nobody's life was at risk. We are in America. You do have the freedom to shop your insurance. Okay. You're not held hostage. Although today it does feel a little hostagey. But, and then the third thing is like, can they get into the zone of, I'm going to help save this person and I want to keep them? Or do we look for reasons to let it go because it's easier than the difficult conversation? So I think the first step is agencies need to go look and say, pull up, if you record your phone calls, pull up the last couple of recorded phone calls. I think sometimes agency owners don't know the standard we're talking about too, where it's like, oh, I'm sorry. Where did you go? Can I get our next step is for you to send me a copy of the policy so we can keep it on record to make sure there's nothing missing. Like I tell people this and they're like, but here's the thing, Kelly, we don't need a copy of the policy. Well, I was like,
I can cancel it without even a signature if I want to.
Yeah. I said, so what do you mean? What do you mean? The agency standard is we need a copy of the policy. Well, we don't need a copy of the policy. I go, right. The carrier does not need a copy of the policy. The agency needs a copy of the policy. So the agency's standard is to get a copy of the policy. It's kind of like the whole thing of like when we write business, it's like, well, we have a carrier that will write it. I go, yes, but the agency won't write it. Like we can, but we're not. And so I had some account managers really fight me like, that's pushy though. I go, it's pushy just to say the next step is for you to send me a copy of the policy. The person on the other end of the phone does not know that you don't absolutely need it, that you want it. And if somebody really doesn't want to send it to you, you say, all right, I'll note your file and move on. But we need to give our team tools to stop people from leaving. The next thing we need to do is train them how to do a renewal review. And you know what? Here's the great part. I think a lot of agency owners, I'm curious what you guys think of, like a lot of agency owners will say, oh, well, we'll put them in a 1-hour training on how to do a renewal review. That is not enough, people.
I might have just been giggling over that one.
And so maybe Stephen, you can, like, cause you went through some of the training, right? Like, why is 1 hour not enough?
If it doesn't stick and they don't understand the why, we have to be consistent and we have to help them understand. And then we have to hold them accountable. They have to understand the why and build the habit.
Mm-hmm.
Like I love starting a new diet. Every time I go to the doctor, she hands me the DASH diet or whatever it's called. I can't even remember because I don't follow it because I'm a rebel like that. I know. I pay lots of money for good advice that I don't take.
Good recommendation.
But she hands it to me and I take it and I go home and it sits on the fridge for a day or two. And I'm like, I need to start that. And I go get stuff and I make the right food for a day. And then I travel and then I come back and it's sitting on my desk because it's no longer on the fridge because I guess I didn't need it on the fridge anymore. And then I forget all about it. And then 3 weeks later, I clean out all the bills and the pile of papers. And I'm like, oh, there's that diet I should have been doing. Same thing with renewal, right? And providing good service. We have to be consistent to get the result.
A good way to look at it there, friends. It's a good way to look at it.
And how much training do we give our insurance agents? We just kind of throw them in there, expect them to learn by the people around them. That's how I learned. Luckily, I listen really, really well. And if I don't know how to do something, I'll ask somebody else to do it and then listen and understand how to do it next time. But there's a lot of agents out there that are just thrown in the fire and you can't just look at them and say, here, do renewal reviews, go. And I think that's what happens. I think, we need to do tips and tricks on how to do renewal reviews. We have to do classes on it. We have to sit down with people and do them directly and show them how it's done. We need to role play. Woo, that role play word.
Role play, Therese, you're crazy.
Oh, and I struggle with role play the other day though, and I always make Kelly be the agent because I'm always like, and the other day I was with Bobby and I was the agent. I graduated.
Yay.
I actually tell my son, because he's learning Spanish and he's actually in Guatemala right now, I'm like, the only way to learn the language is jumping in with people that don't speak English and just doing it. And even if you get it wrong, they're going to understand, and they're going to, they're going to be happy that you're at least trying. So we've got to jump into those role plays. We've got to do things that are hard, because sometimes things that are hard is where we learn the most.
So true. So true. And I also feel like, guys, like, again, the account managers are literally managing bajillions of dollars, millions upon millions upon millions of dollars of premium. And yet we think training them is good enough to be like, well, they know how to do an endorsement. Like, you got to think of them as a higher level, especially because many agencies today have moved away from producers and have a pretty big house book. They're the agent on those accounts. It's not just simple. So final thoughts, guys, on why retention matters and how we can get people to believe in our retention prowess. That I think a lot of agencies, like, they believe like, yeah, I know we need good retention, but I don't think that they're like, there's not like a handbook that says do these 6 things. And that's what we're trying to provide people, is these are the 6, 7 things that you can do to help your retention rate.
Once you've got it, it's easy. It's not, you're not trying to resell it. You just have to do it right to get there. So doing these steps right and teaching your staff these steps to get to the retention will boost your retention immensely. And the renewal reviews bring in cross sells, which we already know heightens the amount of the time that the customer stays with you. So all of these strategies actually work towards the renewal reviews, which in the end, it's just an easy way to keep the business on the books. You're not having to try to sell anybody. You're just giving them great service and showing them how an agency should work.
Steven, what say you?
Do it. Something's better than nothing. But we got to start somewhere. We need to make it happen. We need to be consistent.
And give your team real good training, not just like quick hits here and there, like until they have that foundation, like where they really believe they can save customers. They really believe in what their mission of the role is. It's just going to be a little bit of an uphill battle. All right, everybody, we will see you in our final retention podcast next week. Take care.